In this century, great strides have been made toward the goal of subverting our republic into a democracy. The foremost tactic of the subverters is subversion of language. By calling America a democracy until people thoughtlessly accept and use the term, the totalitarians have obscured the real meaning of our principles of government. That is a summary of my report on a constitutional republic, not a democracy.
Welcome back to Notify America. We have multiple pressing stories to get to, stories that include some stunning takes from a number of U.S. senators about their new border insecurity bill. We have Republican senators letting their true colors shine, and we also have video of Chuck Schumer explaining how America will regret not passing this bill. As not passing this border bill, he says, will result in Americans being sent to fight in the Ukraine. Wait till you see this. Also, Tucker Carlson has in fact completed his Putin interview. Confirmed yesterday afternoon, Tucker met with the president of Russia at the Kremlin for around an hour, and the reaction here in the States is just next level, folks. We're going to show you what we mean. And more stories, by the way, from around the world that are important, that corporate media doesn't want to touch. But before we get started, thank you for liking and sharing these videos. It really helps me out. And make sure to subscribe to the channel so you don't miss these daily updates. The U.S. Senate has struck a new deal on border security with a price tag of $118.3 billion. It appropriates $60 billion for Ukraine military aid, $14.1 billion in security assistance for Israel, and only $20 billion for the border. What's crazy is when Trump first got into office back in 2016, the Congress was arguing about an $8 billion border wall. They refused to appropriate $8 billion to fund Trump's wall. He had to skirt by with using funds from other places and pay for parts of the wall. Yet today, Democrats and Republicans come together and they want to pass a $118 billion package. It's crazy. Now, this deal won't pass. By the way, the Speaker of the House already came out and said it's dead on arrival and good riddance, because it's not a border security deal. It's a border insecurity deal. It includes a daily threshold on how many migrants can cross the southern border each day illegally, codifying into law that as many as 5,000 migrants can enter the country per day before the bill triggers the authority for the federal government to step in and slow the flow, effectively legalizing illegal immigration. I mean, that's what it does. It allows 5,000 illegal aliens who are now technically allowed to enter each day before the federal government can act. It legalizes it. And I believe the real purpose of this bill, the true intention of it, is to tie the next president's hands, to make it harder for Donald Trump to do his job when reelected, if he is reelected. I mean it. I read the bill. I don't understand what the point of it is. Not to mention it funds the purveyors of this illegal immigration, of this problem. It gives over $100 million to the NGOs who are helping organize all of this. The Republican senators that are on board with this need to be primary. They have to answer questions as far as why they think this is a good idea. Elon Musk came out on X and blasted the bill, explaining what he believes to be the real goal of it. Watch this.
Here's a claim being circulated on Twitter, or X, by Elon Musk, who posted, quote, "The long-term goal of the so-called border security bill is enabling illegals to vote. It will do the total opposite of securing the border," unquote. Now, I know that Elon Musk is not an expert on illegal immigration or the border, but he has a huge megaphone.
He does.
Explain what he's talking about here. Is he wrong?
Well, I think he needs to go back to doing the 2 million Teslas that are currently being recalled right now to be able to focus in on that. No, it's not focused on trying to be able to get more illegals to vote. That's absurd in the process on it. It is against the law for anyone that is not a citizen of the United States to be able to vote in the United States in any federal election. That remains so. Obviously, we're not dealing with that.
That was a Republican, U.S. Senator James Lankford, who was the Republican negotiator, the chief negotiator in this deal. I have no idea why he's defending this. He got a raw deal. Why he's criticizing Elon in the process. Then on the Democratic side, the top Dem in the Senate, Chuck Schumer, went on MSNBC last night and tried to explain why he thinks this is so important. Why America will regret not passing it, he said. How not passing it will result in Americans fighting and dying in the Ukraine. Watch this.
You've said that you worked very closely with Leader McConnell on this bill. Now that we see what's in it, seems to be as bipartisan as it gets. Why wouldn't both sides really want this to go through?
Well, it's a great question, Mika. Look, it took a long time, 4 months of arduous negotiations. They fell off the tracks a whole bunch of times. I had to be on the phone even at midnight saying, we've got to keep going. Why? We're at a turning point in America. This bill is crucial, and history will look back on it and say, did America fail itself? Why is it crucial? Well, if we don't aid Ukraine, Putin will walk all over Ukraine. We will lose the war, and we could be fighting in Eastern Europe in a NATO ally in a few years. Americans won't like that. If we don't help Israel defend itself against Hamas, that perpetual war will go on and on and on. If we don't help humanitarian aid to the starving Palestinians in Gaza, hundreds of thousands could starve. And the border, everyone has said it's chaos. A speaker, you just saw Speaker Johnson, he said it's chaos, we have to do something legislative a few months ago. But what has happened, in answer to your question, so this is crucial for America. It's a turning point. History is going to look over our shoulders and say, did we rise to the occasion? To his credit, Mitch McConnell did. But too many Republicans, including Speaker Johnson, are just scared to death of Donald Trump.
Which brings us to our next story. Tucker Carlson was indeed in Moscow to interview the president of Russia. It was confirmed yesterday afternoon a news outlet, Sputnik, captured video of him leaving the Kremlin. This is something that Western media and the DC establishment have been holding their breath over, hoping it wasn't true. Well, it was, and we'll now be able to hear directly from Vladimir Putin, something Washington has tried very hard to prevent us from doing, going as far as banning RT, Russia TV, in the United States and Europe, saying it spreads Russian propaganda. Obviously it does, but no more than CNN spreads US propaganda. Viewers are smart enough to know what's BS and what's worth looking into, at least that's my opinion. Shows a real fear they have, for whatever reason, I don't know what the reason is, of letting this man speak. They did the same thing during the pandemic, though, trying to block alternative voices from speaking. Anyone who didn't toe the official narrative line was censored. Well, Tucker Carlson has a massive audience, and his millions of viewers will hopefully get to hear a real conversation between these two men.
We're in Moscow tonight. We're here to interview the president of Russia, Vladimir Putin. We'll be doing that soon. There are risks to conducting an interview like this, obviously, so we thought about it carefully over many months. Here's why we're doing it. First, because it's our job. We're in journalism. Our duty is to inform people. 2 years into a war that's reshaping the entire world, most Americans are not informed. They have no real idea what's happening in this region, here in Russia or 600 miles away in Ukraine. But they should know. They're paying for much of it in ways they might not fully yet perceive. We are not here because we love Vladimir Putin. We are here because we love the United States, and we want it to remain prosperous and free. We paid for this trip ourselves. We took no money from any government or group, nor are we charging people to see the interview. It is not behind a paywall. Anyone can watch the entire thing, shot live to tape and unedited, on our website, tuckercarlson.com. Elon Musk, to his great credit, has promised not to suppress or block this interview once we post it on his platform, X, and we're grateful for that. Western governments, by contrast, will certainly do their best to censor this video on other less principled platforms because that's what they do. They are afraid of information they can't control. But you have no reason to be afraid of it. We are not encouraging you to agree with what Putin may say in this interview, but we are urging you to watch it. You should know as much as you can. And then, like a free citizen and not a slave, you can decide for yourself.
Let me know in the comments if you'd much rather prefer hearing from Putin yourself versus taking the word of CNN to transcribe what's in the man's head. I know I sure would rather hear from him. Well, speaking of CNN, here was Aaron Burnett last night preparing the CNN audience for why Tucker Carlson doing this was oh so dangerous. Watch this.
A massive shakeup in Kyiv coming as Putin is trying to court the MAGA GOP in the United States. In fact, one of the leaders of the MAGA GOP is in Moscow tonight. It's the man you see here with the MAGA leader Donald Trump, Tucker Carlson. Possibly there in Moscow to interview Putin. Definitely there as a Putin-supporting celebrity. Just listen to how Russian state media is breathlessly celebrating his visit.
Independent journalist Tucker Carlson has flown to Russia from the U.S. via Turkey to Vnukovo Airport. He saw Spartacus Ballet at the Bolshoi Theater, had lunch in a nice restaurant, went for a ride around town, rode the subway. He charged his smartphone via a USB port and connected to a fast and free Wi-Fi internet.
He charged his phone, although they're knowing the details about the fact that it was during USB port may give him reason to think twice about all of this. But look at them talking about him like a celebrity. Everything he does on camera, breathlessly repeated. Now, it is unclear if an interview between Putin and Carlson will take place, but if it does, it gives Putin a chance to sit down with a big supporter.
It might be worth asking yourself, since it is getting pretty serious, what is this really about? Why do I hate Putin so much? Has Putin ever called me a racist? Has he threatened to get me fired for disagreeing with him? Does he eat dogs? These are fair questions, and the answer to all of them is no. Vladimir Putin didn't do any of that.
I'll actually always remember watching that clip. I was standing in Ukraine 48 hours before the war began there. Well, Carlson then stood by Putin consistently all the way through. And that is why he can go to Moscow now without any fear of being summarily imprisoned. He's a hero. This was Putin's mouthpiece in the United States, somebody who had turned a blind eye to the atrocities committed by Putin because they were happening far away. Once vibrant towns turned to ruins, mass graves with dozens of bodies in the Kyiv suburbs, a theater full of innocent women and children sheltering, bombed, despite the giant world's children written on the roof, more than 200,000 Ukrainian soldiers killed or injured. And tonight, Putin is trying to seize on the fact that Zelensky's military appears to be in turmoil, capitalizing on a moment of intense American political dysfunction and intensifying.
In another story, Yemen's government came out and warned the United States and its allies over the weekend that they need to back off and stop the bombing of its land, or you'll face one of the worst attacks you've seen in recent history, saying, we know where the cables are for your digital infrastructure. A scary threat. How they pass right through our backyard, they said, right through the Red Sea, and that they're not afraid to cut them. If they did in fact do so, by the way, that would take down a fifth of the world's internet and take most of the US bases in the Middle East offline instantly. Here are the cables they're referring to. Right here is the vulnerable location. It passes right through the Red Sea, right by Yemen, right by these Houthi strongholds. In another story, President Biden is being called out for another gaffe in a recent campaign event where he seemed to confuse French President Macron with their former leader, Mitterrand, who died 28 years ago. Watch this video.
People have pled guilty. You know, right after I was elected, I went to what they call a G7 meeting, all the NATO leaders. It was in the south of England. And I sat down and I said, America's back. And Mitterrand from France looked at me and said, you know, why, how long are you back for? And I looked at him, and the Chancellor of Germany said, what would you say, Mr. President, if you picked up the paper tomorrow in the London Times, and the London Times said, 1,000 people break through the House of Commons, break down the doors, 2 bobbies are killed in order to stop the election of the Prime Minister. What would you say? I never thought about it from that perspective. What would we say if that happened in another democracy around the world?
Now, a lot of people are making a big deal about this, but to be honest, I really don't think it's as bad as what we normally see from Joe Biden. That's like your average Tuesday gaffe, in my opinion. Let me know what you think. All right, that wraps up this episode. Like, subscribe, and we'll see you next time.